Hello, everybody. Welcome to Lunar Alchemy, Archetypes, and Elements. Today, we're going to be discussing Thunder and Gene Key 51. Bella, it's like your video sent a thunder shockwave at you and made you far away. You were really close before, and now the video is far away. It's fine. But anyways, for those of you joining us on Facebook today, this is our final live stream discussion from our Lunar Alchemy discussions that we have each transit that we will be streaming live on Facebook on the Unlock Your Design Facebook page. In the future, we're going to be hosting that discussion, still free for anyone to attend. However, we are going to ask you to register to receive the links to attend that webinar. And for doing so, we're going to offer you an auric clearing transmission, which is a powerful and fantastic example of the quantum energy transmissions that we offer with each transit as we move around the wheel, so that you can experience that and understand how powerful they are at shifting your awareness, perspective, so many things that happen on those levels. So, hello, welcome to our solar members. Thank you for bearing with the new procedures today of having two different links to deal with. I'll try to guide you through that when we come to our moment of transition. So, all right, let's get to it, Bella. Tell me about this archetype of thunder, and what draws you to this one in particular? As you know, we all are on our own evolutionary paths in exploring the gene keys, and you've been doing that for quite some time. So now that you've been incorporating these archetypes into the process, I'm curious where this one draws you with this particular gene key.
Yeah, sometimes I love it, and sometimes I want to run so far away so that it can't touch me. Yeah, this one is unexpected, and it's like that, kind of like you were saying, the lightning that just changes the perspective of how it feels and how you live life. I do love the 51 when it has to do with like the spiritual, and to go deep into the ceremonial. And I do struggle more with the 51 when it's in the everyday life, because then I can't make sense of it. And I wonder where there has to be shock. I wonder why things have to like burn up, you know? So it's definitely a challenge, this thunder archetypes that's here to initiate us, and that's here to test our innocence. Are you going to be knocked out of your innocence, or can you stay in your innocence and open your heart even more when life slaps you, kind of how it feels like often?
That's a beautiful question to ponder, and also one that I think leads directly into the depths that this particular gene key offers us to explore. For those of you, if you're watching and you're you don't have all of the gene keys at your fingertips, this is the gene key 51, the shadow of agitation that moves to the city of awakening, and it's the pathway of initiative. And as in our discussion today, I hope we get a chance to talk about a few of those different terms and what they mean. Particularly, awakening is a word that is being used all over the place for people who are having epiphanies of awareness, where their perspectives are changing. They may be shifting their beliefs and all of these types of things. And referring to that experience as awakening. And in context of the gene keys, this isn't the same, not really the same energy going on. So I hope you have a chance to discuss that. But Bella, I was particularly struck, and in regards to your comments, how the 51 is sort of intrinsically intertwined with its harmonic gate, the 25. You mentioned the innocent. That's the archetype that kind of keeps coming forth from that that gene key energy that whose essence is universal love, and then also its programming partner, the 57. And you know, thinking about shock waves, the thunder, that energy of life that shocks you into and initiates you into a new awareness. Does it rattle your innocence? Does it destroy your sense of innocence? How do we respond to that? And I wonder what ways, Bella, that you may have found, whether it's between these three, or I know you mentioned that this gene key on its own is maybe frustrating or gives you a hard time in the physical realms if you aren't dealing with something that's non-physical. Mm-hmm. And, you know, I kind of suspect that's primarily because of how physical the shadow frequency is in this gene key. I mean, it's like intensely physical, and it has almost nothing to do with our behaviors, our emotions, our thoughts, our ideas, even our active choices that we make about our life. You know, it's like totally in our body. So, I mean, this one, it's so deep in there, it feels like it might be tricky for us, you know, people who are maybe spiritually minded and thinking about these high frequency concepts and ideas. How does that stuff even touch this gene key at some level? Like, where do we move out of the realm of sort of mental, psycho-spiritual imagination and something that is more deeply real in our experience?
Yeah, with this one, so we have thunder over thunder, and the shadow frequency, agitation, is anxiety begging to move. And what I feel, like you're saying, it comes and it's physical, and it wants to do this in you. And when you are in contact with somebody else, because often we know that it's more than anything in relationship that we get to see the shadows, we get mirrored with them. And I believe that it's so easy to take out that agitation and anxiety on the other, because it's begging to move. So we want to be the innocent, and we want to kind of react towards the other. And I feel, yeah, the ability to not react and also not push it down, because if we push this down, I think it can annihilate us. And if we come out with the other, it risks of destroying everything that was innocent in that relationship before. It risks of destroying it. So for me to be able to be aware of this energy and not necessarily in the shadow frequency, project it outwards, that's where I feel like the main thing is.
Yeah, I mean, it feels like the balance between that the reactive nature and the repressive nature, because when this energy is inside us, this sort of agitative energy, if we don't have a clear channel to move it in a creative way, it's gonna do something that we don't want. And if we're in relationship with this form of energy in a way where we're thinking about how much we don't want it to get out or stay in or whatever it is. We're actually ignoring that creative impulse from being activated by the energy itself. And, you know, for me, growing up, I grew up wanting to be a creative artist of some kind, whether it was a visual artist or a musical artist or whatever it was. So for me, this form of like, okay, I have to find a pathway for this energy was kind of a natural process for me growing up. But I realized that many people never really encounter that or have that experience or have the opportunity to have that experience of whenever this energy shows up, seeking some creative outlet to draw out your feelings or just run around outside and naturally express yourself. That was my childhood. You know, I was lucky in that way. So, you know, dealing with this energy without having those opportunities or that resources to me really seems like it would be very easy for a person to get themselves kind of painted into a corner where you really can't do anything except you're either going to sort of crumple under cowardice or you're going to like lash out at something outside of you in hostility. And, you know, it seems very ironic that this is like the basis of our experience with awakening, you know, which is supposed to be this, you know, experience of absolute transcendence, you know. So I don't know. And Bella, I'm saying this kind of like, I don't know if there's something to say about this even, you know, like if you project that energy outwards, you're going to be hostile. And if you try and like smush it down, you're going to sort of like choke your own life out because of the crippling of the fear that you experience. So it's like, man, if someone is in that place, what do you do?
Yeah, and like you were saying before, it is so connected also to the constriction of that 25 and then the unease of the 57. So programming partner and harmonic gate. And those are, they are so good friends or bad friends. So it feels like a locking in, and somehow with this archetype still, the only thing that's good with it is that thunder kind of moves. You know, there is something that is clashing, like different temperatures of air. And so I think that one of the things is, and how I'm saying that the resiliency in knowing, if you don't push it down and you don't like completely extremely lash it out, to know that if you have the resilience to be aware of it, it is going to shift. There's going to become a little bit more cold air, a little bit more warm air, and then there is this discharge. And actually for me, I'm like a big proponent of also moving energy. So I have this bombshell thing, and I have a phone that is like, I have one phone that is for like work, and then I have one phone that is only kind of music. So when I feel, especially this week, like I've used it all the time, like I have 14 minutes to the next call. Let's put on something and discharge the energy. And for me, I feel like there's something for me with the vocal cords that seem, maybe because they vibrate like the air vibrates. So for me to get into the discharge of energy, and often through the vocal cords, yeah, I believe we can move energy. It's maybe true that we cannot push awakening, but we can definitely move the air and create, and know that it's going to shift. And sometimes you can help to move the energy, not because you can't bear to be in it, but just because you understand energy metabolism, I guess.
Yeah. So while I was well, I was thinking about this energy of thunder, you know, I was like, okay, what else is going to be related to this one primarily? And you know, you can think about thunder and go like, well, how does thunder even exist? Well, it's the sound released from a lightning bolt. And lightning is, you know, it's a form of the fire element in a way. But the thing that really like impacts us, the thing that really makes us feel this energy is the sound. I grew up in the Midwest and where there's lots and lots of thunderstorms. Like every year, there's at least 4 or 5 like massive thunderstorms that shake your windows of your house, you know, at some point in the year. And I remember feeling of this sound wave kind of like just shaking you into, I mean, it was sort of terrifying and exciting at the same time as I remember it. Obviously, we're all going to respond to that differently, but thinking about the importance of sound that this particular energy has, and when considering the particular way that we experience this energy, like, is it going to shake us loose from our center, or are we going to be able to ride these waves of sound and you know, move through that energy, that powerful energy, without having us lose our center, you know? And it feels like that's one of the things that's like really at the middle of this particular energy. You know, if you read the I Ching, the 51st is called the arousing, which relates to thunder, of course. And one of the primary aspects of that I Ching judgment and image is that there is a shock, a thunderbolt, a thunderclap, and there's a person depicted in the image who's doing a delicate spiritual ceremony that involves a spoon and a little bowl or something. And even though there's this massive thunderclap, this sound wave, this shocking, it doesn't rattle the person at all, and they move through it with ease and grace to complete the ritual that they're in the midst of. And it feels like a really powerful image when we think about the most shocking events that we encounter in our lives. You know, days like 9/11, you know, moments where there's a natural disaster where you live, some kind of like weather event, an earthquake, a fire, tornadoes. For those of us from the Midwest remember tornado drills when we were a kid. Strangely enough, we did the exact same thing as an impending nuclear bomb strike.
John, I think it's your internet, or is it, wait, let's see. You go out for me a little bit. Is it my internet?
The internet was a little bit
Okay, yeah, it seems like it's John.
particular. That's it. That's a good thought, JLo. I'll try to remain more still. If the less I move, maybe the easier it'll.
Do you think that this would?
Anyways, so Bella, this kind of idea of remaining centered in the midst of the shock, where does this archetype go? Where does it lead us to? That's something higher frequency, that's more of a positive experience that can kind of I don't know, like, what is this initiation for?
You know, I would also say, so one thing is this resilience of, and in that there is an acceptance that says, I know I'm not centered right now. That is why I'm not lashing out, or I'm not pushing down. That is why I am kind of watching it. Because for me, awakening and this channel that goes from the ego center to the G, this is a birth canal into that awakening and into more of who we are potentially here to be and express. So love, direction, and the true self. That's what we come in from the ego and the 51, and then in through that innocence, that birth canal, into the G. So I feel like there is also this acceptance of knowing, I don't know. It's extremely uncomfortable. At the same time, I know that it's dynamic, and I know that there's an impulse in me, like through me, that wants something. If we would look at it in, like, this would be the very spark in the very beginning, and we have been in some of those hexagrams now for a little while, but this is, I mean, this is just the spark of lightning, like we said a few weeks ago. So there is not really any way of managing it more than, I would say, knowing that it's there, that it's uncomfortable, that it will move, and that there's an impulse, a life impulse that wants to come through. And maybe a question is like, what is this? What is this moving in me? What is this initiating in me? Like, that would probably be an inquiry. And I would say it would be a pity to be on the other side and be like, oh, okay, I'm a little bit less agitated, a little bit less constricted, and a little bit less in unease. Okay, let's move on. Like, there's really something here. And that's how I feel. Like, I remember we had a summer house when I was a child on an island, and there's like almost no trees there. It's very flat. So when there are thunderstorms, you can see them super far away, and you can see the lightning's coming closer, and it's like fields. It's very powerful. And then how good it feels after the thunder and after the lightnings then go out, and it feels like everything is new. And I guess also scientifically with electro, like there, it's, I don't know how you say it in English, but you can feel it in the air, like in the energy that after the discharge, there is like a new beginning. There is a new energy.
Yeah, it made me think about how the nuance of responding to tragedy that people are exploring, and how in the face of that, some people find a deeply meaningful purpose from the tragedy, and they continue on with that purpose for sometimes extraordinarily long periods of time following the actual event itself, sometimes long beyond when the shock of the experience has kind of dissipated and allowed us to fully integrate our experience of it. Whereas also sometimes in response to a tragedy, people want to do something, not because they're finding a deeply meaningful purpose, although that experience might be part of it, but they want to do something because they can't stand to sit still with the energy of the tragedy inside them. And that kind of nuance to me is like, that's like when you're right at that edge of like kind of getting swallowed by the shadow, or kind of blossoming in the gift. And of course, both are present there, you know, like anything that someone does of a positive nature in response to a tragedy is going to have some positive impact somewhere in the world, whether it's on their own life or on many other people's lives or just one other person's life. It's always a fantastic choice to make. But that difference in is that response coming from a place of needing to do something to get rid of the energy that's present, or is it needing to do something because it activates your creative independence in the world, to go away, that to go in a direction that for you is right, and but that no one else has ever gone, like a way that you are going on your own, like throwing out the guides. You're just know that it's right for you and you move forward. And it seems to me the difference between those things is very, very small in our emotional experience, you know, and would be really easy to kind of miss. So, Bella, tell me about, I'd like to hear a little bit about your perspective of awakening, because that's the Siddhic frequency. And when I think about the gene keys overall, I tend to think, and maybe this is because I'm a 6 line, a 6-2, you know, I tend to think top down from our experience of hierarchical spiritual ideas. But I think of awakening as being this essence, this state that leads us, that has kind of given us a platform to evolve through agitation and initiative. And now we're living in a time when everybody's talking about awakening. You know, people are on the internet talking about, when I had my awakening, this is what happened. Anybody else? You know, it's like one of the most common awakening comments that I see on social media these days. So I'm curious what your perspective is on this frequency and this energy that is called awakening in the gene keys.
Yeah, first I would like to say that I do think there is a difference between openings that can be sudden in awareness and awakening. I do feel that the interesting part to speak about is awakening as still being in this human realm. So the awakening where we go completely out of what's even like a dualistic way of seeing the world, where we're feeling our bodies, somehow that is less interesting. I think it's possible, but where I believe that the gene keys are taking us is in that beautiful rainbow, that range from the shadow to the glimpses of the city. So what I feel with this 51 as well is that I am the spark, and there are not only 64, but at least 64 different flavors of awakening. And I feel like all the 64 cities are beautiful nuances of how that can be. And I feel like as humans, there is a differentiated way, a unique way, a unique flavor of the more your awareness opens up, it's still going to have a flavor, because that's what we are here to share with the world and tap into in this timeline, in this lifetime.
Yeah, interesting.
And you know, when it comes to if it comes from up down or down up, it doesn't really matter.
Right. Well, it's interesting from, you know, our sort of embodied physical perspective. In the description of, I think it's in the city portion, it's describing how we can get on these rungs of a ladder where each time we climb higher, you know, we've moved further into our opening, or what people are calling their awakening. But even this activity of climbing only takes place while we're still, relatively speaking, asleep. So it's like we see where we're climbing to, or where we think we're climbing to, right? And we call it what we think we're headed, instead of where we actually are. And along the way, of course, then we attach all sorts of meanings to all of those things. Like, is it pessimistic to say that even though you're growing, you're still asleep? Is that a negative judgment that is, also getting in your way?
Mm-hmm.
It's such an interesting. I was just going to say, it's an interesting paradox that here we are trying to climb towards awakening, and yet the climbing actually won't even do it. We're just sifting through the layers of our sleep.
Yeah, what I was going to say, I feel that there's more like a nuanced relationship to awakening for me. And I was part of something called Enlighten Next, maybe 10, 15 years ago. And they had like an international network where there were retreats, a lot of silent retreats that started in silence, which was the being part. And then halfway through, after 8 days or something, it was the becoming part. And then there were lectures, and still very structured and very concentrated on evolution. So the being is the old awakening way, where you sit like Eckhart Tolle, and maybe I've said this before, you sit on the, like if you were on the bottom of the sea, and reality is a little ripple on the surface of the ocean. And then the becoming is on the edge of evolution. And then again, a little bit like, which I don't resonate with. And I know that my mom is sometimes sending me some YouTube videos, and she's saying the same thing. She has the 7 in her life's work. And she's like, I don't like when they do we and them, we, the awakened one, and them, they are sleeping still, and I don't resonate with that at all either. And I know in those retreats, when you have been in silence for 16 days and you are in nature, and you don't, like, you have a very structured, like a very structured day around meditation. Yes, there could be these moments where it feels like your body's not even there and you just feel joy, and it's like that's the nature of meditation. You are going to feel it, but it kind of it's quite a lot of work to go to Florence, like I did sometimes when you live in Philadelphia. You have to get there, and then you have to tell your loved ones that they're not going to hear from you in 16 days, and then you have to give your cell phone, and like it's a whole project. So for me, the nuance for me of what awakening has become, and possibly this has to do with my 46. This has to do with some of the activations that I have in my chart. But for me, awakening it's like a little bit like that ladder. How much bliss can I feel in my body without having to go anywhere, without having to do anything with that body? How much can I just turn inwards and feel the universe of what I am, and feel, that I don't have to go anywhere, and that everything is perfect right there and then. That for me is awakening to how amazing it is to exist. And I don't feel when I'm there that I need to go anywhere else. So then somehow I'm not trying to become anything anymore. And that's a simple way of tasting what it is to not have to look for something further.
Yeah, it feels to me, that feels like, when we started our conversation, you were talking about the kind of non-spiritual, the physical, everyday life type of being, that the description, what you were just describing, it seems as if there's maybe some collective energy or thought that says, if I do nothing except feel good in my body, then all of the things that I'm juggling are going to fall down and fall apart in my everyday world. And, you know, I certainly don't have an answer for that, but I wonder how true that is.
Yeah, and I think that that's the well, maybe I wasn't able to make that that difference. I'm not actually speaking about the flesh. I'm speaking about being so pure in your body so that you can feel the energy moving.
Mm-hmm.
And the more that you are like attached or identified with the flesh and like part, you know, kind of that kind of very, that kind of pleasure, then I feel like, then you are not going to feel like there's nowhere more to go. There are going to be all kinds of desires that want to take you to different places and you know, do different things to feel the pleasure, whether it's eating a chocolate cake or a person or, you know, like.
Yeah. Well, so
so like to say, I don't know if what you were speaking about is that thing, like also the same thing of like, oh, as long as you don't hurt anybody else, just live your life and like don't care and like just try to be in that space where it's not uncomfortable. Well, the 51 is going to come and tell you that there's no way you're going to be able to stay on that path, then you wouldn't be on this planet.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like one thing that we can really count on with the 51 is that at some time it will show up. If your being has anything to do with awakening in any way, which I believe every human being does. Every day we go to sleep at night and we wake up in the morning. And so awakening is a part of our nature. And that sort of ensures that this energy is going to come into our life at some moment, at some time, to shake things up. And, you know, honestly, to me, it seems like it comes a lot more frequently these days than the way maybe that we'd heard about it in times of distant past. Although maybe that's just a projection from maybe everybody in their own time feels like they're going through it more than anybody ever has.
I was seeing something else. I feel like I'm speaking a lot today, but I was seeing something else with a we and them, which is if we think about that path, that birth canal from the 51 to the 25 and coming into the true self. And we know the 25 is the innocence. So when we get stuck in we and them, which is an ego expression of saying, I'm stronger than you are, I'm better than you are, I'm first awakening. What happens is that you can never come through because it's not innocent. You know, it's not, when you do that, you're making yourself better. So you're never going to be able to get through. So it feels for me, that thing, like for me, the highest expression, like when sometimes I watch things often nowadays, and I'm like, how is it possible that awareness has not even a little bit touched this being? Like, how is it possible? Like in a part of me either feels nauseous or fascinated, you know, it's like depends on the day. And then what I believe is, you know, because other people could be like, oh, you know, so how can they be so stupid? How can they be so asleep? Or how can they be so, and it's like, for me, when I can be in that kind of, that fascination almost, if I can, for me, the highest response to that is compassion. I really feel like I'm living in a different reality than this person. What they are speaking to is a completely different perspective than what I have. And I actually feel that my perspective is bringing me closer to the heart. And this perspective is putting this person and everybody's listening further away from the heart. Well, can I have compassion that somebody's on a path away from the heart and I seem to be finding my way towards the heart. Like that for me, the compassion for the one who still sleeps, who still is partnering with what's not so high frequency. So that's the we and them, I guess, conversation.
I'm really glad you brought that in, because one of the qualities of this gene key that we didn't really speak very much about, and probably is easy to overlook, is how central love is to this particular frequency. And the idea of thunder within love, you just described it perfectly. Here's a person making an expression that, if you follow that expression and allow yourself to be influenced by it, you may feel led away from your heart, meaning you'll feel worse than you did before, perhaps. and yet, for me, when we talk about what is love, and in the discussion of universal love, talking about something that is non-emotional, an experiential reality that encompasses all of the emotions. And so when we encounter the shock of a person leading away from the heart space, whether it's through anger or fear or whatever it is that expression happens to be, can we grab the initiative and move in the direction of our own heart in response to the person that, if we follow their pathway, we'll call it us and them. Yet if we seize that initiative, that moment of initiative, that gift that's coming from this experience, we can open ourselves to calling it. We're together in this, even if we don't see eye to eye about how reality is, or what the experience is, or what needs to happen next. And yeah, it's really interesting that, I mean, so many gene keys lead back to love, but here I feel like, Bella, you kind of put your finger right on the point of the topic, where it does end up being an opening to love. Like, what is initiation for?
Yeah. And the leaders that are using agitation to have people take initiative against each other. Like, look at the world, look at the war,
Right.
Look at what's going on. So instead of being able to use the way back to the heart, we're using this kind of energy, the uneased agitation, and then we take initiative, so that at least we feel, like you were saying, we can't hold the energy, so we need to do something, whether it's grief, whether it's this feeling of, because like we say, this energy is hard. So that seemed to be a trend as well.
Yeah.
So that it feels in the moment like you're feeling better because you have something to fight for. But is that fight taking you closer to union? I see in the chat, is it taking you closer to union and divine union, or is it taking you to more separation?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I think that we got to the central aspect of this gene key as far as lunar alchemy is concerned. So for those of you watching Facebook, I want to thank you for joining us for our final live stream discussion that you can find on the Unlock Your Design page. In the future, we will be hosting discussions which you can register for free and still attend those discussions as you desire. Those will be taking place on Mondays at 3 p.m. Eastern. And you can find the link in the comments there to register for the updates and receive the links to join our discussions. We would love to have you present with your energy in that webinar space. So for our future discussions starting on Monday, April 11th, we'll be there. In addition, when you register, you will receive access to an auric clearing transmission. Energy transmission that clears the aura of densities, traumas, and other types of energetic structures that are essentially non-resonant with the essence of your being. So we're living in a swamp of energy that's constantly being exchanged and moved between people. When we have a negative interaction with a person, we walk away feeling kind of icky. It's because some of that person's energy got into our space and we are actually unconsciously holding on to it. These energy transmissions help us to let go of those things and remember the true essence of who we are more clearly. And that in turn makes us brighter in the world.